Next slide. You all are pros at this already. We're going to have some project updates and an update from the Community Oversight Advisory Committee. And then we're going to dive deeper into the workforce and some construction work packages. Then we have some exciting updates from the A&E team and how we might be a part of design considerations for the highway undercrossings, and we'll move into next steps. I wanted to share with you that there is much work to be done. I know that we had a great milestone with advancing Hybrid 3 for recommendation to the OTC, but we appreciate your continued commitment to the work as we move forward. Next slide, please. Again, I don't have to worry about this group. You all know that your voice matters. It's my job to make sure that we have a conversation that is respectful, but that is authentic and that we're addressing issues. So I want to hear from you. I want to engage with you. Y'all know I will call on you if I have not heard your voice. I trust that you will speak your truth, that you will help us to hold this project accountable to the goals, and elevating your voice is the important part of that. So speak your truth. Those who are listening, please listen for understanding. Again, we love our community, and often this can be a passionate conversation. So we ask you to listen for understanding, deal with the issues, not people. We have a lot going on at the end of the day. We are all here for the same purpose, to move this forward with benefit. Exciting new opportunity for the historic African-American community in Portland. Sometimes when we're dealing with passionate issues, we're going to experience discomfort, but that's where we grow. So we appreciate you leaning in, remaining respectfully engaged. When you're communicating, I would appreciate it if you would keep your camera on. We're getting close, you guys, to an opportunity maybe to engage in person, but in the Zoom platform, if you keep your camera on, it helps us to simulate connection. And again, accept and expect that we won't solve everything today, but it's our goal to move the process forward with your engagement. Next slide, please. At this time, we are going to have an opportunity for those in the community who would want to offer public comment. Miss Mira is going to help me here. Mira?
Yes, ma'am. I don't see any callers in the queue. So do you want to give it some time?
Just a quick moment. We want to let all of those know who may be tuning in and watching. Your voice matters as well. We look forward and to your comments. There are opportunities in other spaces for you to be able to engage with the project team. There are email, there's a website at i5rosequarter.org where you can get further information regarding the project and send your comments in written for this body as well as the project team to engage around your comments. Ms. Mira, any yet?
No, I don't see any.
Okay. Well, we want you to know that we appreciate those who would be joining us, and please utilize all of those other avenues, the call-in number, as well as the email to share your comments and thoughts with us in regards to the project. Next slide, please. With that, I'm going to turn it over to our Director Channel.
Thank you, Erica, and thank you, HAAB members, for being here tonight. I know it's a beautiful sunny evening, so I'm ever appreciative of your spending it with us here. And Erica, if I'm not stepping on your toes, I also want to extend a welcome to our newest board members. So specifically Bryson and Dr. Amato, thank you for joining us in the HAAB space. It's just great to see you here, and look forward to having you continue to work with us as we go forward. So Erica, do you want me to pause for a second and have Bryson and Dr. Amato do a quick introduction?
I would love that.
Okay.
I would love that.
sorry to put you two on the spot, but how about Dr. Amato? We'll have you go first.
Sure. My name is Ebony. I am thrilled to be here and to be in the presence and company of so many great people. Love everything about what this platform is bringing, what we're discussing today, and the benefit to the community. So I'm just happy to be here. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Amato. Bryson?
Yeah, no, it's been great to have previously been a part of this through the executive steering committee, and now being able to kind of keep moving the process forward. I know we hit a big milestone, but that was just the beginning step. We've got a lot of stuff to get done between now and when the project gets built. So I'm happy to be a part of it.
Thank you both. Appreciate that, Megan. Thank you for making space for that. And we look forward to continuing the work together with you. Director Channel?
Absolutely. Well, Bryson has a good segue to my next slide is all about hybrid 3 being advanced. So if we pull up the slides here. As you know, the hybrid 3 option for the Rose Quarter project, we are continuing to move this forward, really following the previous recommendations from you as the board, as well as support from the Executive Steering Committee and then consensus from the Community Oversight Advisory Committee as well. So the commitment and the involvement from the community in making this project a reality really just has been critical in getting us to this milestone. And as Bryson pointed out, we have many more milestones to come and a lot more work ahead. But I think it's important for us to just celebrate the critical work that happened to get us to this point that allows us to move forward. So thank you to all of the work leading up to that. So just wanted to kind of hit on a recap of the Oregon Transportation Commission meeting that was on September 9th, where the commission did recommend hybrid 3 to move forward and advance and further evaluation, though with a few conditions. So just want to make sure that everyone's aware of that. I think the biggest note that they made in comments that I heard was really around the change in potential cost of the project. So the conditions kind of relate to that. Specifically, the commission did direct us to create a finance plan by December 1st of 2021, so just a few months from now, an initial finance plan that really documents the estimate of the amount of funding that's needed to build the project. So we'll be refining our cost estimate to inform that finance plan. They've also asked for a plan to secure dedicated funding from a variety of sources, looking to the current administration from a federal level with upcoming infrastructure funding that could be coming down the pipeline to Oregon and to the Rose Quarter project, as well as other state funding sources, but also local funding sources, specifically from the City of Portland, Metro, Multnomah County, and TriMet being noted in the commission's conditions around that. So we have a lot more work to do, again, on the finance plan and discussing with partners, federal to local, for how we'll be filling the gap for hybrid 3 as we move forward. I think, for me, the commissioners made it clear that their concerns around the additional price tag, as well as the need to better understand how all current stakeholders, sort of including the local governments, will be involved in that finance plan development. So again, we'll be working there. But I think also what I heard was an ongoing commitment from the commission to ensure that the project is creating that long-lasting benefit for the Black community and is creating jobs now, while also maximizing the developable land on top of the highway covers and looking towards cover programming that really centers the Black community as we look forward. So I think we also heard from the commission that there was a reiteration, really the importance of project schedule. And I think that was in light of the significant opportunity that we have relative to jobs and career development for the project, but also, time is money, and we want to make sure that we're having the best and most efficient use of our dollars on the project. So again, there's a lot more work to do in moving our project forward, but this is an important milestone, an important step as we look ahead. So as we move down the pathway for hybrid 3, we'll be working closely with the board here and already jumped to the next slide. So I'll start talking about kind of what the next steps ahead look like from a high level in terms of the project milestones. So there are many milestones ahead of us. So our next big milestone in this schedule is really around progressing hybrid 3 to a 30% design milestone. We're currently at about a 5% design understanding of the highway covers. And then for the broader project, other elements outside of the highway covers, we're at about a 20% design for the rest of the project. But 30% is a next big milestone for the project as a whole. So that's the stage where in kind of preliminary engineering, it's the part of the design process where major elements of the project become well-defined. We understand the fatal flaws, have identified those, and that we have, we're committed to budget and schedule at the 30% design level. 30% design is also where land or property acquisition needs of the project are well known, and we start to work on the right-of-way work as well. So want to just acknowledge that that is coming down the pipeline next year, and then we're still on track for construction beginning the early work packages, which we'll be hearing more about from our CMGC team starting in 2023. So I also just want to acknowledge that with the sunset of the Executive Steering Committee and really the HAAB carrying forward the role of working with our project team to inform our design process, the HAAB really is going to be focused in on a number of areas, providing advice and recommendations to move the project forward. And so we'll have an opportunity to work together with Erica and collaborating on updating the charter for the board here, but just wanted to highlight a couple areas that I think are going to be kind of key points of work as we collaborate together. So one is really looking to the HAAB to be recommending transportation design details that help to be responsive for community economic development needs, aesthetic desires, public health, again, in the spirit of ensuring that the project is having long-term benefits to the Black community. Also helping recommend system design details for the project. So thinking about the local street designs, transit designs, kind of pathways to improve movement for people within and through the project area, as well as working with us to adopt performance metrics for how we measure, how we track and evaluate our project work and our project success, or if we're not tracking towards success, how do we work together to course correct, and making sure that that's being done in line with the values and outcomes for the project. Also, recommending ways to minimize community impacts during construction. That's going to be a big piece, not only upfront in the design as we're starting to think about it, but as we continue to program our kind of means methods approach for construction as well. Also looking to the HAAB to advise on equitable community engagement strategies. You as board members know the community best. So how can we best communicate with the community? And looking to you to provide that expertise and help us best represent the project in the community as well. And then making sure that, again, we have that cross collaboration with the Community Oversight Advisory Committee, that there are issues that might be elevated from that committee over to the HAAB or vice versa, that we're elevating any relevant issues over to the COAC that relate to the Disadvantaged Business Enterprise or Workforce Program. And then last but not least, and probably add to these as we continue to refine the charter, but is really informing and advising on how the project connects with other community efforts that contribute to restorative justice in the Albina community. So making sure that we're not just focused on the project as a silo, but how it connects with the community around. So in terms of next steps, these will look familiar to you on the next slide. And again, is a reiteration of sort of what we have for the year ahead. So you'll notice that the first item is develop necessary intergovernmental agreements. I know that this was an area of kind of key question from the board as we were working through the independent cover assessment process. So just want to provide an update on where we stand with the current IGAs. So based on the governor's convenings, there is an IGA that was developed by the governor's office and is out for partner review for the governmental entities that were part of the governor's convening. My understanding is that IGA is really intended to memorialize the discussion and agreements made around that table, really around moving hybrid 3 forward. We recognize as a project team that there's going to need to be some additional project level IGAs, intergovernmental agreements, that really clearly describe the roles and responsibilities during planning and implementation, how we're paying for technical support staff from partner agencies, as well as addressing regulatory and permitting compliance and defining decision-making structures along the way. So sort of an iterative two-phase process with the IGAs, with the current governor's office IGA in process now, and the more technical project level IGAs to come. I'll also acknowledge that there will need to be a future IGA around the governance of the highway covers, which again will be led by an entity that has land use authority. In this case, I know that there's been mention of the city of Portland, so that will be a separate process, but one that we'll be tracking along the way. I've also mentioned that there will be work, as we go forward with the design development and technical review of hybrid 3 happening over the next year. So again, we're picking up the preliminary 5% design concept that is hybrid 3 and carrying that forward to about the 30% design level. We'll be doing technical analyses, the environmental review process associated with that. And then using that information iteratively to inform our cost estimates, and then eventually the finance plan that we will be reporting out on at the end of this year, and then making sure that we are in lockstep with our diversity plan as well, any updates that might be needed based on the new design modifications. So that's the work that we have ahead. Another piece on the next slide, just as we're not going to get into the details of this today, but want to flag an area that we'd like to work with you on in the future, is that we want to work with you on reconsidering and kind of reconfirming that our project values are consistent with the outcomes that you as the Historic Alpina Advisory Board are looking to achieve with this project. So when you arrived in January of this year, the ESC had already adopted the values really prior to the start of the HAAB. So we want to just make sure that we have a moment to revisit those with you and discuss in more detail to make sure that you have empowerment over the values and how that guides our work moving forward. So that's on an agenda to come, but just want to flag that that'll be an important conversation for us. With that, I will pause. Erica, I'll turn it back to you, I think, for the COAC update.
Indeed. Next slide, please. If Janelle Bell is with us, I'd like to invite him to share an update from the Community Oversight Advisory Committee.
Great, I am, and good afternoon, everyone. And thank you so much, Erica. John L. Bell, facilitator for the Community Oversight Advisory Committee. We met last Thursday as part of a continuation of COAC's work with the CMGC. We had an opportunity of really continuing to roll up our sleeves relative to the workforce and apprenticeship discussion. COAC received a presentation by the CMGC and posed a number of questions seeking their input as to really how do we begin to close the workforce gap by a trade that exists in our community. And so the CMGC heard a lot of great ideas relative to recruitment strategies, really building the pipeline. So that conversation will continue until the diversity plan is complete. But we continue to have a great dialogue and ideas in terms of, how do we really realize the goals that we all have relative to this project. So I know Jeff was there. I don't know if I missed anything, Jeff or Amber, but that's the general update.
Did either of you have anything to add? If not, this is an opportunity.
Covered that all. Thank you.
Good deal. Thanks, Jeff. Janelle, thank you so much for being with us and for that update. Yeah, we look forward to the continued collaborative work. This is an opportunity for the HAAB, if you have any questions related to what you've just heard from Director Channel or from Mr. Bell in regards to the project update or COAC. This is an opportunity where HAAB, you can ask your questions and we'll do our best to answer them. I see your hand, Mr. Edwards.
Thank you very much, Erica. And thank you, Jonelle, for giving that brief report. But are there any hard goals that we have regarding the workforce and apprenticeship for diversity? And could you explain further what the green sheet means?
I'm sure Jeff knew this was coming, but I'm going to defer to our CMGC, Jeff Moreland.
Yeah, so the green sheet is essentially when we take it's our kind of planning tool to be able to achieve the diversity numbers that we've used. Keith, we've used it on every TriMet project for the last 20 years. So we go in, we do our 30% estimate or whatever estimate we're doing. And based off of that, we look at the current DBE capacity. We look at those areas that we have an area to build capacity in when we don't have a lot of DBEs. And then we kind of also look at many CMGC opportunities, and we take and inform the estimate with all that information. And that brings us to an idea on what we think we can achieve from a diversity standpoint. And then the next step, and that's just kind of a rough number, so kind of we spend hours on it in the COAC. And then the next part, we do the same thing with workforce. We work closely with the current capacity. So we look at the capacity in the unions, we look at the capacity in the non-union shops, we look at their diversity that they're currently having, and then we're able to estimate and plug in what we think we can achieve in terms of workforce and inclusion on this project. So yeah, we do have a lot of numbers. Right now, we're going to talk about the early work packages later on in the presentation. But yeah, we do have some preliminary estimates on the old design, which of course is not going to be overly relative at this point because we haven't, we're at 5% design on the hybrid 3, which we have not got a chance to really look at doing that estimate. So all the numbers that we've had prior to this are kind of obsolete at this point. So we don't have hard numbers right now, but we did have hard numbers, what we thought we could achieve on the at the 20% estimate. And again, of course, every price iteration that changes and it shifts.
Thank you very much, Jeff, and thank you, Jonelle. And I know this is only one project, but my concern is that when we have apprentices, they cannot be only relegated to one project, because when that project is over, then what happens to them? And so I just wonder, is there any efforts to have any coordination with other projects that are going on so that we don't lose those apprentices and they go elsewhere, or they just go away somehow, so that there is some continuity so they can complete that apprenticeship and become journey level workers?
Keith, that's absolutely a fabulous, question. And that's why this job is such a golden opportunity, because this is a 5-year project, which allows us in pretty much every apprenticeable trade to journey somebody. Can start an apprentice on this project and journey them out on this project. We're also kind of getting early started, so we've actually started leveraging, because of how large this project is, we've started leveraging our own projects, and we've started bringing in apprentices, and we're already starting the development of the workforce. We've been doing this for years. So we're working with the JV through SUNT is leveraging their project out at the water treatment plant. And you have Hamilton leveraging a lot of their projects now to bring people in to prepare them for this, for the Rose Quarter project. So that process has already started, realizing that to keep the apprentices moving, you got to get them in, you got to keep them working in order to get them journeyed out.
Thank you very much, Jeff. And I just want to just add a little bit. Thank you very much for being that responsible contractor that we want others to emulate and look forward to becoming responsible in that vein.
Well, and just to add to that, Keith, one of the things I think would be helpful to have this esteemed body, as well as COAC, as Jeff indicates, continue to pose those questions, but to look at all of these projects as a system. We also know that the Interstate Bridge Replacement Program, which of course is project of both WashDOT and ODOT is in the early stages. And as we think about this project and what it will mean for our community in terms of our contractors as well as the workforce side, how do we ensure that we're building capacity such that folks are in very competitive positions time IBR comes around, which is going to be a $4 billion project. So, we have a once in a generation opportunity here to really get folks from poverty to true prosperity. And Rose Quarter is in a unique position of being able to be first with great partners like Jeff and his team.
Thank you.
Are there other questions for the HAAB? This is a great conversation. Other questions related to the project update? Mrs. Stell, I see your hand.
I was wondering, what did, from our recommendations that we made to the other committees, what carried over, like for sure, for like the policy measures that we recommended, or is that going to be addressed later on in the project?
Estelle, it's a wonderful question. And I think that there's more work to be done to kind of confirm specifically point by point in the HAAB letter, what will be carrying forward. I think obviously the HAAB's recommendation to carry hybrid 3 was the main piece, but as it relates to, specifically around priorities around the governance of the future of kind of what are the uses on top, what gets programmed on top, that will have to be a conversation a bit separate from the project. And so I don't have a specific answer for you yet on how that specific recommendation is carrying forward, but we'll want to make sure that that is part of our ongoing conversations, particularly as the entity, the city, having land use authority will be taking that on and making sure that we're carrying that recommendation forward, not only as we did to the commission, but to the governance kind of sponsor as well.
And Amber, before I get to you, I see your hand. I think that there are other considerations that were involved in the recommendation as well. Some of those directly relate to DBE workforce, this relationship with the CMGC, with the JV and Raymore Construction, and how that would benefit the community. So there are a number of things on the considerations list from your letter that are consistently being worked through, elevated. There are advocates, not just this group, but Jeff and his team, the CMGC. And so we're continuing to hold them accountable to those things, and we'll make sure that we continue to update you as those different considerations and points become at the forefront. Ms. Amber, I see your hand.
Yeah, Estella, I just wanted to follow up on the point that Erica just raised, and I wanted to make a connection with you and the workforce advocate from the CMGC. So if it's okay with you, ma'am, I would like to set up a communication related to your houseless recommendations and other stuff. Is that okay?
Yes, I was going to talk about that today, so that would be wonderful.
Cool. Okay, thanks, ma'am.
Beautiful. Mr. Edwards, I see your hand.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to reiterate and just support Estelle and her remarks, because it's so important that I think we want to make sure that all those points have the same value and the same importance to our community. And we want to make sure that none of those are lost. There's no point that diminished or we're going to be saying that that's a minor point. They're all important to us as a community, and I just wanted to share that. Thank you, Estelle, for bringing that to the forefront.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, moving forward, what I'd like to do with the board, if you're good with it, is let's kind of at each meeting kind of track where we are with each of those considerations. If there's things that we can address kind of in the moment in a particular meeting, or an acknowledgement if it's going to be another entity that we need to make sure that we're communicating with, just so that we don't lose sight of those.
Thank you for that. Any further questions on the update? If not, Miss Natalie, if you would share the slide, I'm going to ask Director Channel if she would begin our conversation in regards to the construction work packages.
Absolutely. Thanks, Erica. So I just wanted to take a moment to kind of highlight our project team and our construction team as we move forward. I know that a lot of our focus has been around the highway covers. The project is a lot more than that as well. And so we're going to be starting to talk about the project and different packages. So the purpose of this conversation is kind of to orient of how we're thinking about how we're physically going to build the project and design the project. So before we get into the what of the different packages, just want to acknowledge the project team. So the project team does include, individuals like myself as the project director, Monica Blanchard as the deputy director, and other staff from ODOT. We also have an owner's representative team of consultants. We also have a team of architecture and engineering firms, or A&E, as you'll hear referenced. So experts like James McGrath, who you'll be hearing from momentarily later in the agenda, as well as Steve Drahoto, who you've heard from before, really leading our architecture and engineering team. So including topics like traffic and urban landscapes that feed into the project design. And then finally, and certainly not least, we also have our construction manager general contractor team. That is the Hamilton Sunt joint venture in association with Raymore Construction. So Jeff Moreland and Matt O'Connell are here today, and I'll be turning it over to them in just a moment. But they're really responsible, the CMGC responsible for building the design in a way that meets our community goals and is carrying forward the disadvantaged business enterprise and workforce goals and overseeing the team of subcontractors. So together, collectively, we all comprise a project team. And so while we have distinct roles and responsibilities within that, we're set up to work collaboratively together under the CMGC model, really with the goal of making the project the best that it can be. So as I said, we've focused on the highway covers for a while, but want to use this opportunity just as a reminder about kind of the full extent of the highway and local street improvements that we will be constructing. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the project construction packages and then turn it over to Matt and Jeff. But in this, we're also interested to hear from you as the board of what are your areas of interest around the work packages, primarily so that as we talk about these in future conversations, that we can tailor those to kind of best meet your needs and interest areas as well. So next slide. Well, this covers the overall project limits, a lot of what I just talked about. But again, this is a snapshot of the overall project. So again, we're looking at the I-5 corridor between 84 to the south, bottom end of the screen, and then 405 to the north, Fremont Bridge on the top of the screen. And then again, looking at the Broadway-Weidler interchange and the local streets that connect within. So you've got the Broadway-Weidler corridor running east and west across, and then the Vancouver-Williams corridor running north and south, and a couple other local streets in between. So those are the overall project limits that we're talking about. We can go to the next slide. So I know that you've seen the schedule slide before, specifically at your last meeting as it related to conversations around hybrid 3. So just wanted to dive in a little bit deeper today, again, into the early work packages. And again, noting that we're getting ready for that construction in 2023. So you can see those on the bottom portion of the schedule there, early work package A and early work package B. And so while we're developing more clarity and on the core area of those highway covers shown in the main package or in yellow, we also are making progress on the design to the north with early work package A and then to the south with early work package B. So again, we'll be seeking your advice on the technical issues related to this work. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Matt and Jeff to kind of speak to some of the specifics of what early work package A and early work package B entail. So Matt and Jeff, over to you.
Thank you, Megan. Hi, I'm Matt O'Connell. I'm the project manager representing the Hamilton, Sun, and Raymore team. During the last couple months, we've been looking at these two packages of work that are located on kind of the ends, the north and south ends of the project. As you saw from the previous slide there, we have collaborated and decided that it's really going to be best for everybody to try to do these at the same time. It creates a lot more opportunity for the subcontractors and also some economy in the way of management of the work. So it's really going to work out well to do both of these at the same time. Next slide, please. So package A is on the north end of the job. And it occurs strictly on the northbound side of I-5, primarily north of the Elliott Viaduct, or north of the Great Tubman School. And it entails a couple of bridges. These are widenings to make room for the auxiliary lanes on the northbound side. The first one is the bridge that goes to the 405, and the other one is the one that takes you to the Greeley exit. And there's a couple retaining walls also in there north of the Elliott Viaduct. There's some drainage work over on the north side of the 405. You can kind of see that at the far left side of the slide, and some street work on Russell that occurs. There's a slight shift in Russell Street that's the result of the work. There's also freeway signage and lighting involved in this package. Next slide, please. On B, which takes in the south portion of the job, we have work on both sides of the Interstate 5, both north and southbound, and there'll be 4 bridge structures. One at the Holiday Haslow, where the Rose Quarter Transit Center is. The bridge to the 405 eastbound has some work, as well as the mainline bridge on southbound I-5, and then moving over to the northbound side, there's some bridge work on the structure that runs from the westbound 84 to the northbound 5. So there's a decent amount of bridge work. There's several retaining walls in this package. There'll be great opportunities for some contracting opportunities. There's also one sound wall. In both packages, we have some minor earthwork, nothing really big. And we also have some road work on package B, where we'll actually do some new concrete paving on Interstate 5. And then there'll be street work under all the bridges, including Monmouth, Holiday, Oregon, Wheeler, and Lloyd. All will have some work on them, resulting from the bridge work that we're doing above them. And just like the other package to the north, it has some freeway signage, lighting, and then there's also some traffic cleaning work down at this end. So that takes in kind of the scopes, and Jeff has some preliminary figures regarding subcontract opportunity and workforce information.
Okay, thanks, Matt. So as we said, Keith asked about the green sheet. So we've actually gone in and we've done kind of our preliminary 30% estimate. And as a result of that estimate, we've gone in and now informed our green sheet. And so that estimate is approximately around $190 million. And so we estimate in terms of existing DBEs that we actually have, that range of subcontracted work is between 28 million and 32 million, which represents about 16%. We see capacity building opportunities. Again, these are areas where we don't have a lot of existing DBEs, but we want to get DBEs into more of the fields that have a lot more skill involved in it. And so we're in the capacity building. We see that range between 6 and 8 million, which represents about 5%. And then we have the mini primes, because at the end of the day, we're trying to grow our companies, to the size that, of of a Hamilton and Son, right? You know, Raymores, we want to grow our companies. And so we still see those opportunities between 13 and 16 million for a total of DBE opportunities in terms of subcontracting of between 43 and 49 million, which represents about 25, 26% of the overall early work package estimate. And that's in with our green sheets, when we did that. And we also went down and did our craft hours. So we're looking at an early work package is approximately 400,000 craft hours. And this is just a craft. And this is all in today's dollars, by the way, too. So we're not accounting for escalation or anything like that. This is all in today's dollars, which the craft payroll comes out to approximately $30 million in fully loaded wages. And the total hours, which also would include now all the management staff, field engineering, project management, to help manage that, we're looking at about 650,000 hours for this work, which is approximately a total payroll fully loaded at $55 million. So this is a good opportunity we can get started. We're hoping in 2023, as Megan talked about, to start actually putting our people to work. Thank you, Megan. That's it.
All right, thanks. Thank you, Erica. That concludes our construction-related conversation. So back to you.
Thank you. I wonder if there are any questions. We have just a couple of moments from the HAAB in regards to the information that was just shared in regards to the early work packages. This is your opportunity, HAAB members. We have the experts here with us. Dr. Amato? I have you muted still. Dr. Amato, you're still muted.
Thank you. I'm so sorry. I've been in enough of these all 2021. I should have figured it out. But thank you for the presentation, Jeff and Matt. And I know this list exists, but I can't readily put my fingers on it. The crafts and trades that you guys are talking about potential opportunities for DBEs and for existing companies for growth expansion and all of that, for those fields and trades and crafts you're talking about outside of the management, is there kind of a list that is out there that highlights some of those potential opportunities?
Jeff, you're muted.
You got contagious, Dr.
I know.
God,
I'm Reverend, I'm sorry about that.
So yeah, this work will include just about every craft out there, right? We'll have electricians, laborers, cement masons, pile bucks, probably carpenters. We're going to have pretty much all of them, traffic control, flaggers. And so, yeah, we'll be doing a lot of outreach early on. We're actually doing it right now to prepare people, like I said, we've hired a ton of people now, not just craft people. We've actually hired a lot of people as field engineers and interns to be able to get them into the programming of this. So yeah, those lists are out there, which essentially, damn near every craft, Dr. Amato. Okay. So I'll be available.
I was just thinking like for NAMAX and, I know Nate's, I'm sure is all over it, but just like you said, that early outreach to get people. So, cause sometimes I know just being in a Black community, we miss the boat and early on, getting, for whatever reason, sometimes those opportunities present themselves, but we're just not aware. So I was just thinking, definitely Nate and others who need to know just so. All right, thank you.
Mr. Edwards, I see your hand.
Yes, and I know we're a little bit premature, but I want to know who is going to have oversight over this. Is there going to be an independent oversight committee that is responsible for making sure that all the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted in regards to our workers being paid appropriately and making sure that the appropriate craft is doing the work?
Yeah, that's pretty much, standard in terms of the way we have to track it and the way we report certified payrolls. So I'm sure, ODOT will have their system that we'll use, but the JV will have their own system to track that and keep accountability over that. And as far as the oversight committee, we're on one of them now. Yeah.
Amber, I see your hand.
Sure. So actually the ownership team, which is myself and Andre Baugh. So we are developing the compliance program in concert with ODOT. ODOT, it ultimately has the authority for oversight, but we will do some of the steps that we will present the information to ODOT, and ultimately some of that information will also be provided to the COAC as part of our transparency and accountability measures.
Mr. Edwards?
Yes, thank you. If I may, will there also be an opportunity for some of the contractors that may be new to this or maybe smaller or just emerging to mentor them and tutor them in regard to their future success?
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, go for it, Amber. I was going to say our mini CMGC program is probably best suited for that. So Amber, I'll let you take it away.
Sure. So there is so Jeff has talked a little bit about this, but there is a mini CMGC program, which is essentially, it's a technical assistance program, but it's more than that. It's also a mentoring program with the JV and with Raymore. And it's a lot of wraparound services for that DBE. And there also will be other technical assistance for other subcontractors as well. And if y'all feel like you want us to have a recap at a future meeting to recap some of these things, we would be happy to do that.
Thank you. I think if we have periodic reports, that would be wonderful. At a minimum, quarterly reports.
And also what we're trying to do, Keith, is we have all this in our diversity plan that I'm sure at some point, once it gets approved, the HAAB will have access to that probably too, to see it. And so a lot of the details on what we're attempting to do in terms of technical assistance and mentorship and support service and outreach all be clearly outlined in that diversity plan.
Thank you. Thank you again.
Dr. Richard, I see your hand. Mr. Washington, I see you next.
Thank you so much. So with all of the suggestions and recommendations that I'm hearing on this Zoom meeting this evening, I've been hearing that we'll revisit some of these at future meetings. Is anyone from the project team or has anyone created a project tracking sheet that we can actually review? Because there's a lot of information coming out, and I trust that folks will share it at a future meeting, but I think some of these are so important that they actually need to go on a project tracking sheet that we can review at every meeting. Thank you so much. I yield back to my good friend, Ms. Erica.
Dr. Richard, Megan, I'll let you answer that.
Sure. So yeah, Dr. Richard, we've started a project tracking sheet kind of with the different questions that we've received. It's at the last couple pages of the meeting notes from each meeting that you receive. So we can, in addition to having them there, we can make sure that we're kind of bringing those to the forefront with the key items that we're addressing at each meeting as well. But we do have that tracking sheet that's been ongoing and actually tracking all of the questions and concerns and items from your first meeting.
We have a phenomenal staff support that is doing the work of capturing all of our conversations, all of the questions, concerns, and then we're revisiting those and tracking along as we provide answers and your input to those. So I'll make sure to highlight those for you all again. Ms. Amber, I saw your hand.
I was just going to add to what Megan said that so we actually have what we call a COAC matrix, which is tracking the COAC's recommendations and then how the CMGC has responded to those recommendations. And so we can provide that in part of your packet and then like provide a tiny little update related to that, because it's rather lengthy and it's going to take like multiple meetings to go through all of them. But we should definitely provide that to you so that you can see step by step how the CMGC has responded.
Thanks, Amber. Mr. Washington?
Thank you very much. Jeff, I hope you got your mic turned down. No. You know, one of the things that while I've been sitting on this committee is to continue to bring to light the fact is that we're trying to unpack this thing outside of construction, not just in the construction reality, but we're trying to also reach as many circumstantial businesses or businesses that are in the peripheral that works. So to unpack this out in a greater way that it just gets outside of the construction reality, it just doesn't stay limited within the scope of construction, but we're able to reach other types of businesses that mitigate and support construction. So as big as we could unpack this, a broader impact that we can get. So I want to constantly remind us of that, because you know, we tend to get kind of listen to these conversations, and as much as we have an intention to want to get outside of this box, we tend to focus inside of this box, and we never really invite other elements into it outside of the construction world. So we would hope that the economic impact would be able to be greater than what it is just in the realm of construction.
Thank you for that, Mr. Washington. Mr. Modica?
Greetings and good afternoon to everyone. A notion occurred to me, and it's in the form of a question. Is there any formal outreach to our community colleges with regard to prepping the students up for this next 10 years of work? If you combine this project and the interstate crossing, there's going to be plenty of work. And as well, if the Southwest light rail expansion gets another possibility for approval, that's a lot of work. I know that we have craft people that are already in the craft, but I kind of focus on what Mr. Edwards said, is what is being done for that type of outreach and career path advocation.
That is a absolute great question, and the answer is yes. We have relationships with both PCC and Clark College, and we're working on a program now to start getting young field engineers and young project managers in. We're going to be working closely, hopefully, with Portland State, so they can go into a 4-year program after their 2-year program. We've been doing active recruiting from both Portland State now and Oregon State and some of the other schools to actually get people involved. And we've been visiting the colleges through the workforce advocate to find a funnel our children specifically into some of these construction management programs. So yes, we are aware of that, and it's in our diversity plan, that whole program.
And how about Department of Corrections for those who will be returning to our community?
We also have these are all great questions. Kevin, this is great questions. So yeah, we also have a program, our workforce advocate, that's really near and dear to his heart. And so he's working closely with the coming home programs for a lot of our people who have been incarcerated and coming home to present opportunities for them in the trades and in the crafts.
Well, thank you. I do want to say that I have a high interest in this, and I'm going to be watching. You know, we all know each other, but if this doesn't seem right, I'm going to speak out on it. You know, it's one thing to already be a general contractor. It's another thing to already be on the bench getting ready to come up the bat. But if we're talking about living wage jobs, and as well as what Mr. Washington said, the secondary and tertiary businesses that support or supply the firms doing the work. You know, and we're not just talking about pushing a broom. You know, you're going to have as many laborers as you want, but to actually develop somebody into a skill, a craft, a profession. And I also would have concern, you know, many times the larger projects come in and the workers come in from out of state. And the money's good for us economically until the job is over. And then they jump in their trucks and pull their trailers and go somewhere else. And so, you know, this is something that I think we need to be cognizant of and be brave enough to make sure that extraction of opportunity is limited.
Great point, Ms. Modica. Thank you for that. Jeff, I wasn't sure if you were wanting to address those comments.
No, I mean, those comments are spot on. You know, it's what we spent the last, you know, years for in terms of, you look at our workforce, you know, I'll speak specifically for Raymore. Our workforce includes people from all walks of life. We have a large population that have been previously incarcerated, and we build skill. You know, our people are not broom pushers. They come in and we teach them real tangible skills. We journeyed out operators, iron workers, you name it, we journeyed them out. And all the skills that are not just ancillary to the actual construction duties. In addition to, we created tons of engineers, project managers, and these are all people that look like us, right? 70% of our management staff are people of color or women. 70%, 50% of our field work is done by people of color or women. So we're, you know, out here boots to the ground, and we're planning on doing the exact same thing on this project. And the JV has committed. Sunt and Hamilton have both done good jobs in their tenure in construction, and they're looking forward to take it to the next level on this project. So we're excited about the opportunities, but all those are very, very real and very, very tangible things that we clearly understand and we're clearly focused on. So thanks, Modica.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much. Yeah, this is great, thoughtful, authentic conversation. And that's why you're here, Mr. Modica. That's why this board is here. That's why the COAC exists to hold the Rose Quarter Project team in its entirety accountable to the voice of the community. So we appreciate you all in this conversation. Ms. Natalie, if you would share the slides again. As we move forward, you have heard already from Megan, from others, there is lots of work to do. We have been spending a lot of our time in relationship to the highway cover. And though there is more work to be done on that, we want to shift today to talk about some other potential involvement for the community and how you can be involved and creating a project that our community can be proud of. I'd like to introduce one of our experts on the A&E team, the architecture and engineering team, Mr. James McGrath, and he's going to share with you an opportunity for you to give some further input into the project design.
Thank you very much. I'm excited to be here and talk about something tangible and specific. Next slide. Once upon a time, we came to you and talked about how we were going to take a large and complicated project and break it into some pieces that we could discuss and collaborate on together. And I think that is still true. We want to make sure that we have space and time to talk about the project as a whole and to talk about things other than design. But when it comes to design, we think this idea still holds, but next slide. And maybe Natalie, you can toggle back and forth here. With the adoption of Hybrid 3 as a preferred alternative for the core area of the project, two of our former categories have diminished in their relevance. So Natalie, would you toggle back and forth? Okay, just to make sure. So one of those is we tried to organize ourselves around a sequence of issues related to Hancock-Dixon connection. This was a bridge and a structure that was at the north end of the core area of the project. Was going to do certain kinds of work and make certain kinds of community connections. In Hybrid 3, that is just less relevant. The bridge doesn't connect from Hancock to Dixon. Hancock Street connects across. And similarly, on the Clackamas pedestrian and bicycle crossing, as part of the adoption of Hybrid 3, that idea has also, it's been removed as an element from the project, but the idea of the green loop, which was primarily the planning idea behind the Clackamas crossing, those programmatic elements have been moved up to Broadway and Widener. So next slide. So we think we can simplify our lives together and talk about these 4 issues. And tonight I'm going to talk about one, next slide, which is this thing called highway undercrossings. And you might ask yourselves, why this topic now? And the answer is that while the project core area was going through the ICA process to which you were so attentive and so integrated with, the components of the project to the north and the south, as you've heard the CMGC team talk about, they have advanced. And now is the time when the design team needs your advice and wants to begin a dialogue about some specifics in those 2 areas, because it's becoming schedule critical. So we are going to advance the core area together. Absolutely. We're going to continue to advance the areas related to early construction packages A and B. But we wanted to cover some of this tonight because we've got to get going, and we need your time and attention to do so. I will say, next slide, we have a plan to return to all of those topics, and highway covers. We know that we need to bring that to resolution. You've been very attentive to the work and making the recommendation for adoption of Hybrid 3, but there's much left to be done. And it is our goal in each of these threads that we bring some initial ideas to you, start a dialogue. Then we go away as the design team and your designers, we do some work, we bring back ideas, we discuss those, debate those, cross-examine those ideas and solutions, and then we go back and we refine them, and then we bring them forward to you for a recommendation. So it's sort of a classic 3-part process that we intend to do for each of these elements. It just so happens that highway undercrossings is moving or needs to move the swiftest. So I'm going to ask to move to the next slide, but I think it might also be helpful if I paused just to make sure there are any questions about the overarching framing and any questions at all before we dive into the specific topic of undercrossings.
Are there any questions? Estelle, I see your hand.
I'm wondering if this is the appropriate place to talk about are undercrossings, that's where the boulders are usually placed by ODOT. Is that correct, to prevent people from camping?
That is a treatment we've seen. Absolutely.
Would it be possible, as we keep discussing this design, to kind of make sure that before that's utilized during the project, that we utilize different methods besides the boulders as this project goes on, to deal with the houseless population? Can we kind of make that like I don't know how we could agree on that or something, but I just kind of feel like that's an appropriate thing to have with this project.
That is precisely where we're headed, to talk about what is the project going to do with the undercrossings on the project? What are the treatments? What are the ideas? What are your interests and recommendations? That is exactly where we're headed tonight, in fact.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. Mr. Washington, I see your hand.
Yeah, what are the nuances? I understand that these undercrossings become a significant conversation, but what is it that specifically are you asking us to discuss about them?
I will explain, I promise. That's what's up next.
I bet you will. You, James, I bet you will. But that's I'm gonna keep my eye on you.
I think you should.
Indeed. Well, why don't we move forward, James? I think we dive right in.
So under crossings, there are 4 on the project of significance, and these are where the new bridges that flank the existing main line cross over a street that exists. So there's one to the north end in early work package A on Russell Street, and then the other 3 are clustered towards the south end of the project, Multnomah Street, Holiday Street, which is also the Hollywood Transit Center. It's the Max Light Rail station is underneath that one, and Lloyd Boulevard. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to step through a sequence of slides of what it looks like today and what it might look like tomorrow with the extent of construction proposed. And then we'll talk about the ideas. And this is just the beginning of the conversation. So if you could just move through, Natalie, I think this next series goes pretty quick. Here is Russell today, both sort of from the east looking west and as a pedestrian or as close to a pedestrian's eye view. And this is the extent of construction. Next slide. There will be structures on just the western side of Russell that would be in the foreground of your view coming from upper going into lower Albina. We don't have to talk about the ideas related to this one just yet. All of this we can go back and forward. But let's go on to the next one. Holiday Street actually gets a symmetrical structural solution. So here it is today. And in the next slide, you'll see the drawings, the current design drawings are at the top with north oriented to the left, just so you get a sense of what we're talking about in terms of the bridges. And then there's this perspectival view, very simply done, to say there'll be an extent of structure far away from you and an extent of structure close to you. This is as if you were standing in the intersection by the Moda Center looking to the west. Next one is the Hollywood, or excuse me, the Rose Quarter Transit Center. This is from the west looking east. And this is the with the project. Next slide. So again, symmetrical in the sense that there'll be new bridges on either side of the existing transit center. And then the last one is down at Lloyd. This one's a little bit more difficult to ascertain. It's a little bit more complex, but here we are today on Lloyd Boulevard, and here we are tomorrow. This was our simple rendering that there's wedges of new structure that are added into and in between the existing ramps and threads. So not as large a structural footprint as some of the other areas, but nonetheless maybe worth our consideration. So those are the 4 areas before and after. And now I just wanted to share with you some ideas. Oh, go ahead.
Is this is just south and east, or south and west of the convention center, correct?
It's near like the back door of the convention center. That's right. You're standing on Lloyd Boulevard. The railroad is off and to your left here. The bridge that you see in the foreground of this image on the bottom is the ramp coming off of 84 on its way to northbound I-5. And then the lower bridge that you see in the background is actually the main line of I-5. And it has a different slope. It's climbing its way out from the riverfront.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. Please interrupt. It does not in any way need to be formal. So those are the before and after. And what I wanted to do is just dive into some ideas, just some other things that other communities and other places are doing relative to undersides. So if you go next slide, there are conventional lighting approaches. This happens to be colorful, but these are essentially conventional light fixtures that are trying to bring some semblance of poetry or delight to the undercrossing environment. Next slide. But there's also even more advanced or more creative things that you can do with light. Obviously, we always try to keep safety and visibility in mind as we design our infrastructures, but there are even more playful and interesting things that we could do with light. Next slide. This is by no means exhaustive. There's also things we can do relative to landscaping and using landscape to make spaces, certainly spaces of a certain scale, where light can still penetrate. Landscapes can thrive and they can contribute to making a better place for people. And that's really our ambition, is how do we improve these for the folks that will be walking, rolling, cycling, and traversing these spaces on foot and on wheels. And then there's another, there's art and things that are topically applied. And it's not just paint, there's other treatments and things like that. And then the truth is there's so much more that other communities are doing that is becoming more and more standard practice in the US. So my final slide is this, which is just a series of questions. There are so many ideas for what we might do. We have 4 of these locations. They're not all the same. And they have maybe different civic importance. Russell Street strikes me as a place that has an important historical meaning in the Albina's history. The Rose Quarter Transit Center is probably the one that is most populated. But these are really questions to discuss. Are you interested in this topic? It sounds like Estelle, absolutely. What ideas and questions do you have? Are they all important? Are some more important than others? Would you prioritize? And what should be our focus? Those are 4 questions that can start our discussion, but ultimately I'm here to listen. And then we have a great team that is eager to work on these and bring some ideas back to you in a few months' time for your review and input. So we're trying to dive into some specifics. And with that, I'm here to help in the discussion and answer any questions you have.
Indeed. So HAAB, this is your opportunity. Let's start diving in. Are you interested in diving in with the design team, with the A&E team, and giving your input into how these undercrossings can elevate, incorporate, and I see your hand, Mr. Modica. I saw that. Thank you, Mr. Washington. We'll start with your question or comment.
Modica or me?
Mr. Washington.
Thank you very much. You know, this brings back a lot of some of the older memories about when we looked at the arena down there when Larry was the manager over at the Blazers. And we discussed some of these underpass things around Jumptown. And what did the community want to see up underneath some of these underpass? And I could almost think about all the different topics that are going on. I mean, when I think about the fact that we got Modique here, I think about public safety, you know, and I think about the history of issues of the crimes and gangs and all of that. So when I think about these underpass, when he was talking about them, I thought about him in the beginning that he was asking that there was a problem with these underpass, you know, and that, you know, what should we do about them? That people were sleeping underneath the bridges and they were talking about both. So I thought it was another frame of mind, but in talking about the artistic qualities and the opportunities for underneath these spaces, it's unlimited. You know, and of course, you know, we want our young people to have a safe place to be able to go out and exercise and have fun. And in most of the places that I've lived and been all across this country and the world, is that those underpasses had a lot of basketball hoops for them round ballers to be in there playing and hanging out and all that kind of stuff. And I do believe that if there's some space that we can put art and have an environment that we can hang out in and that our young people can hang out that's safe and you know, that, you know, from under being at the sun all day long and having a place to be in the shade and some stuff like that. So I think that there's a whole lot of creative potential for those underpass. And I do think that the artistic quality underneath putting those lights and all that stuff underneath there, that would make it fantastic. I mean, it'd be a fabulous add-on too. Because if we're going to put a whole community on the top of these caps, and why shouldn't we put something fun up underneath them, you know, having out, you know, some cameras and TVs and all kinds of stuff, you know. So yeah, I can get with you on that one to figure out how to trick that out, because you know, that sounds like some fun. So yes, that's what so I do appreciate. I think it's a topic that we should talk about, but I'm just curious as to why would this topic come before any other topic?
It's I appreciate your comments and I have some questions of my own, but the reason we're talking about it now is because we need this advice as we're marching towards design production so that we can get early work packages and get the jobs and get the work underway. The design team needs some of this feedback. I will admit it can feel somewhat out of order, but we do need, in order for us to develop some ideas that will be compelling to you, we need time to do that. We need time to discuss them. We need time to vet them with the city of Portland and others. And then we got to get them into those design documents. And so that's really the schedule pressure. It's not maybe not the most important thing, but it is the one that we needed to talk about sooner rather than later. So my question for you, Mr. Washington, is, and we will do our homework and we will learn what we can if it's published, but are there things that you learned, and are there resources available and conversations that we don't have to recreate in that Jumptown initiative? If there's something we can learn about the conversations that came before and people's ambitions, that would be great.
Yeah, I think that Jumptown rollout was pretty, they had a lot of plans and a lot of graphics that were drawn in that plan. So that you looked at how they would put basketball hoops in underneath the freeways in some of those areas. And then again, it's also the quality of the underpass. Some are sunken in and shorter than others. Some have a higher ceiling and a wider ceiling and a longer ceiling. So I think that depending upon how we looked at each and every one of them would determine sort of to some degree what type of things we would put underneath them. And then of course, figuring out how to keep them well lit and have public safety in them, because, it's always dark spots always draw dark problems. So, so keeping it lit, keeping it well art, keeping it well so that there's entertainment of some kind, that people can do something underneath them when they're there underneath them, then I'm open to that kind of thing.
Mr. Edwards, I see your hand.
Yes, thank you. To piggyback on what John was saying, that was my concern regarding environmental spaces or green spaces. We have a huge homeless problem that's not going away anytime soon. And I would hope that consideration would be that those spaces would either be convertible in some way so that they don't foster or encourage homeless residents.
Mr. Modica, I cannot tell whether that's a hand raise or it's a check mark, and I like
it. It was a check mark to James's presentation and your question, or Megan's question about, do we have interest? So obviously from the conversation, we have interest. I would say, I caution us, this is an apples and oranges discussion. If we're going to talk about those that are without places to live, that's a different conversation. If we're talking about the best design options and what's important to the community for basically a covered sidewalk or covered roadway, that's something different. I do agree that community safety should be at the top of the order, but that's got to involve a lot more people. It's got to involve the community. We all have diversity of thought. So sure, basketball hoops or picnic tables, but whatever you put in an area that will attract people, you are now collecting people. And so I think that's the issue to keep in mind. If we're talking about generating income, I don't know if rail is going to go under, or is it just going to be bus and vehicles and bikes and pedestrians. I would like to see us have co-bonds, which are basically small modular buildings where eyes and ears and help can be established. I would like to see us have bodegas like they do on the East Coast, so that when you're waiting for your bus or you're walking by, you can get your coffee, you can get, I don't want to say newspaper, that makes me really, really archaic, but whatever you need to access your device, right? And then, because I don't like othering people, I would say this: power. You know, someplace for people to plug in. I may not live under the underpass. I may not even stay there long, but you know, if the business won't let me come in and plug my phone in or any number of things, I think that would be good. Drinkable water fountains. And I think I reflect to the Freeway Park at the Convention Center in Seattle. There's an awful lot of greenery. And that's good for our environment and for our community. It cuts down the heat index and promotes a better environment. So, you know, those are just off the top of the heads, but I caution us to immediately go to, we've got to design this so that people without homes can't be there. Look, people are going to be there, whether they have homes or not. We live it, we see it. It's around us every day in every community, statewide. So those are my thoughts, and that was a check mark, you know, but I appreciate the recognition.
I would thank you for those comments. I would say I want to hear from others if they're interested. It might also help for us to go back and look at those existing conditions and pictures and talk a little bit about what might be appropriate per space, because Russell and the shape of the space and its proximity to other places is very different than what you'll find at Multnomah, and certainly what you'll find with the Rose Quarter Transit Center, and just the amount of activity. So maybe we can chat about what would be appropriate in a place like this versus Mr. Modica, when you're talking about commerce and kiosks. Those are the kinds of things that sound like transit supportive activity spaces. So they don't all have to be the same, clearly. But I am interested in your thoughts, being from and moving through these spaces. What does seem appropriate in terms of use around Russell? Is it important, or should just be a nicer place to pass through? Is it important to dwell, or is it just more gracious movement?
Before we move there, I saw a hand from Dr. Amato.
Hi, I'm going to defer to after the presentation. I think some of my answers or my questions that I had would be answered after he's finished.
Sounds good. So James, again, you were saying just to kind of take a look at the spaces and the differences, correct?
Yeah, that's right. I'm just, I think there's a lot of commonality between Multnomah Undercrossing and the Rose Quarter Transit, the Holiday. They're right next to each other, and they're related to major uses and flows. There's big hotels and convention centers and major activities, and they sort of pulse with those activities, be it everyday commuting and transit or major events. And so I think this is a design exercise that is knowable to me. But where I think we could really use your advice is in a place like Russell, where there are two distinct places on either side of that undercrossing. And so what would our intervention be? Would it be making this place, here it is today, more inviting to pass through? Or does this also strike you as an opportunity to have active play or sports or commerce or those kinds of things? Or does this feel like a pass-through space?
Well, I would like to still jump back in there again on this one. You know, we do the run through this one on the bottom. What is this one right here? This, what's the bottom one? That's the Russell Street?
That's Russell from, if you're up on the hill looking down towards the river.
Yeah, when we do the MLK Dream Run, we run down through here and we tape it. We tape it off, and it's kind of desolate, and you got city lots and all that other stuff up underneath it. And it's kind of isolated. It's between things like business. The businesses are 2 blocks out. After you clear this thing, they're like 2 blocks. You'll run into your first business down there. Okay. And so this one is a little bit more private, a little bit more dark, a little bit more desolate. Whereas opposed to the one that you had up by the train station or the bus station, right? Was it this? Is it this? No, this one right here. Well, I worked with the hotel design here to do this parking lot structure. And when we were looking at this, we talked about how this view on the top of this, and then how the commuters in before, we wanted to put a lot of art on the hotel parking lot. So I was a part of an art committee there. But when we looked at this space, the question was, how did we activate this space to be more efficient for the types of businesses, people that are moving back and forth traveling? So now I could hear Monique's thought about the bodegas or some kind of something that would service people inside of this. Okay, because there's a lot of activity, people are going to and fro. And then of course you got the stadium there, but yet you got nothing in this area to buy nothing. You can't even buy a soda pop someplace around in here, not unless you go all the way back up to where the front of the convention is. Okay, so in activating something that would allow people to have a much more successful experience navigating this and being able to have some type of supports, rather if it's food, water, or whatever it would be underneath this one. Versus the other one, it's kind of a darker design. How do you lighten it up? How do you get it so that when people do pass through it, that there's no dark spaces in it? It doesn't employ or bring to the spot a little bit of, questions and issues about public safety. So how can you brighten this up and make it more palatable, where people would have some opportunity to do something up underneath this, or have some art up underneath it, or some lights that would make it a little bit more brighter. So when people do pass through it, there's not a lot of dark spots in it. So, but I don't know if you're gonna heighten this, or you're gonna keep this at the same height that it is when here. What kind of adjustments are you going to make to this overpass?
Yeah, great question. The existing highway and road generally stay the same. So it'd be more of a continuation of the existing experience and feeling. There will be, you can see rendered here, this sliver of red that will extend beyond the current face of the bridges. So I don't have a dimension on that, but we can get it next time. It's probably 16, 20 some odd feet of structure. So it would be a potentially deeper, darker experience. And that's why I'm asking the question around what is an appropriate intervention. I'm learning enough from you all that we can bring back ideas. We can bring back ideas. This is good.
And this is all downhill also, just keep that in mind. So
only in one direction.
Yeah, right. There's no real landing spot on this underpass right here.
Estelle, I saw your hand. You defer, okay. Other questions for James? It sounds like this group has a great interest, and in light of the schedule and these being included in the early work packages, we'd be looking to include your input in our next gatherings together. James, what were some of the other questions?
We're learning good things. I guess a pointed question I would ask of this group is, does Lloyd Boulevard feel the same as Russell and the other two? Lloyd Boulevard sort of on the edge, a relatively small structural intervention overhead, not a place that I think of as a place. Any thoughts to share on whether we would invest in the Lloyd undercrossing as well? And it's okay if not.
Yeah, do you have a visual on that at all?
Yeah, I mean, we have the existing condition, which Natalie could bring up. There it is today, and it's hardly different tomorrow, but if you toggle to tomorrow, there's something that's added, a little bit of sliver in between two ramps. It's sort of like filling in a gap in the structures. It's different than the others in terms of the scale of the intervention.
Smaller is what you're saying, right?
Yep.
I personally think, this is Ebony, I think we should maximize every opportunity that we can, regardless of the size, to implement something that's reflective of the community. So yes, I think we should.
Bryson?
Yeah, I'd agree with that too, with what Ebony just said.
Great. If Natalie, you would go to that summary slide that had the questions, I think we've had a good discussion, and I've certainly taken a lot away from this, but I think the questions were, are you interested in moving this topic ahead? Resounding yes. What ideas and questions do you have? We've talked about a bunch of those, and certainly enough to get us going on developing some solutions and alternatives that we can discuss with you. Are all of them important? Yes, we just heard that. I asked the question pointedly. And what should be our focus? And I've taken a bunch of notes about that. And it is, I've heard commerce and then engagement, places to dwell, basic services, balance of safety and placemaking. So I feel like this has been really helpful. I'm thankful for your input.
Are there any additional questions or thoughts before we move forward? Hearing none. James, I want to thank you. I don't want to jump the gun here, but I know that we talked a bit about those who have other interests. I know I heard Estelle and some others. And so we'll definitely be looking to you, and we're exploring the idea of having you all, those who have capacity to dive in a little bit deeper with the A&E team and giving your input in regards to some of these. So we'll be getting back to you on what that might look like, and seeing those who have extreme interest and have the capacity to spend a bit more time with the A&E team as they're bringing these ideas back to the HAAB. So James, thank you. I'm excited about that and opportunities to be able to highlight more of a historic Albina in these questions. And next slide, please, Ms. Natalie. And the next slide. So we want to talk with you just a little bit about what's coming forward. And again, just reiterate, you all are so important to this process, and just your commitment to this is important. We trust you as leaders and those with legacy and ties to the Albina community. And I want to again thank Dr. Amato and Bryson. With the sunsetting of the ESC, we wanted to make sure that those in that space that were directly tied to the community still had an opportunity to have voice in this project. So we appreciate you for taking on this additional responsibility. And as we move forward, we're going to be looking to you to help us shape performance measures. So as Megan mentioned earlier, the project values that the Executive Steering Committee helped to shape, we want you to help us take a look at those and see if we have any gaps, places that you might encourage us to add to, and then that will affect what the outcomes look like. And so we want to get your input on that. We've had a conversation today about your voice and your input helping to shape what the highway undercrossing design would be so that it could be included in those early work packages. We also wanted to talk with you about direction on the highway and the local street solutions, and we're going to be looking for your input in that. Community impacts. We know that all of you have direct connection to the historic Albina community, and so it is important to get your input on how construction might impact the community, how all of the things we talked about before in regards to DBE and workforce, how that affects the community, and looking to your expertise in how we engage the community in that way. And then all of these things, how we move forward to shape the 30% design package as the Rose Quarter project team is moving the project forward. Next slide, please. I want to let you all know how important you are to this process, how important you are to me. I want to thank all of you for your investment. I know that you all are invested in many other projects throughout the Albina community, and that we continue to pull on you. So we thank you for that. Dr. Holt, thank you for your leadership in steering the Executive Steering Committee and for your continued involvement in helping us to think strategically how this community benefits. As we wrap up, I'd like to invite you, if you would, to close us out.
Absolutely. Erica, great job as always. Great discussion, everyone. Tonight, appreciate you weighing in and leaning into this important work. Just a real quick thought about the process. Two thoughts. One is the opportunities to engage in the one-on-one meetings with Erica is essential. It's essential to capture your thoughts outside these meetings where you can kind of drill down into some more specifics and particulars or highlight the kinds of things that help to shape these meetings so that these meetings utilize your time well. But also, I want to encourage you to not feel limited to a one-on-one. That's a scheduled one-on-one. You can email, you can call at any time, and many of you have. So thanks for doing that. Our hope is that this is an organic process, that it isn't this structured kind of distant approach, but it's a hands-on, thoroughly engaged, helping to shape what the future looks like. And so I'll end with that thought. So many times we're involved in spaces and work, and we're not aware that we're impacting and shaping the future like we are in this space. And so your voice, your energy, your effort, what you bring is necessary. We talk about it in every opening. Your voice matters. Your thoughts matter. Your strategy matters. And so I appreciate the fact that you're showing up as partners. Thank you for that. Thanks for being a people who are willing to carry this water. And as Keith has said on numerous occasions, not just for himself, but for the future, for those generations that are coming. So appreciate your work. Thank you, guys. Have a great night. We'll see you real soon.
Good night, everyone.